Yeah. Hello, friends and true believers. I am Chris Machete Cochran, your favorite cult leader slash comic book artist. And there's my best buddy, Brent, all the way from the other side of Canada. How's it going,
Hey,
man?
doing okay. It's rare. It's one of those rare sunny days here
Right.
in November. So there's no snow.
Right.
Hanging out. It's good. I like it. I'm gonna get outside.
Beautiful. That's
Get
great. That's
get close
great.
to the
So,
ocean. It's good.
yeah. Watch for aliens in the ocean there. We just did a segment on that.
That's
Okay,
right.
so we're here to do a retro wrestling review because
Yeah.
the wrestling event we're going to talk about is pretty monumental for us Canadians and actually for the WWE. And also because Brent was at this event. So this is WrestleMania 6. This was at Toronto SkyDome.
Yeah.
And this was the first WrestleMania that was not in the US. And
That's what's funny about that graphic though? They've actually got it. That's WrestleMania 7.
oh, well,
No, they screwed it up. They
yeah,
screwed
but
that graphic
anyway,
up.
just
That
going by
Mania.
that was the
Yeah.
coolest graphic I thought I could see
Yeah.
with them there. I thought that might even be CGI generated. I have no idea. But anyway, so Brent was here. He was at this. This was a very, very monumental event. There was 15 matches here. So how old were you when you were at this event?
What are we, 89? What was it? It was 1990, right?
I didn't write the year down. I don't know.
I think it was 90. So I think it was would have been 14.
That's a late night for a little Nargan, huh?
Yeah, I think I was 14. It was like a whole thing because it was
Okay.
like we got the tickets at Christmas. I
Yeah.
remember specifically looking at because my mom had got them for me. Like I remember specifically looking at them. And they were $28.
Wow. And you
For
got
the
some pictures there?
Yeah, so from the 500 level, but there was
Man,
like
$28. That's wild.
they had that WrestleMania. They had that WrestleMania event. So they used to have this thing. So I have an old photo album here.
Yeah.
You can
And
see
this is
how
the SkyDome. What's the SkyDome called now?
It's called Rogers Center now.
The Rogers Center.
But you can see there's like the Bushwhackers there. They were kind of just walking around the concourse, and then you had like my cousin Daryl worked at Edge 102 at the one time, CFNY, and they were covering it. So they had like the WrestleMania run, and then they had a couple of these little things here, which was pretty rad. Check this out. See if you can name these. Let's name drop these guys. There's the truck, the old truck.
That was Tito Santana. I don't even have to. I just saw him right there a little bit. That's Chico, Tito Santana. And that is, just looks like Mick Foley with the glare on it. I can't quite
Have
tell.
a look.
There's a glare on it.
Oh, how about there?
Is that Akeem?
Hillbilly Jim.
Oh, Hillbilly Jim. He didn't fight, but he was there. Okay.
Yeah, so they had, the whole WrestleMania thing, the weekend.
Wicked. Yes, this is
activities and
WrestleMania 6, and of course it was sold out. And legend has it that Lance Storm and Edge were there as younglings watching it as well.
Edge was definitely there. I don't know if Lance Storm was there, but Edge was
Lance
definitely
Storm was,
and Christian. Edge and Christian were there at the same time.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I say, 15 matches, man. Do you remember being exhausted after this was over?
I mean, I was just so excited to be there.
You did? Yeah. Cool.
So you're just, and plus they had a dark match.
Oh my gosh. Right. Because they filmed. Yeah. So do you remember how long you were at the SkyDome for?
It was quite a while.
Did you get there at lunchtime and leave at like 11 at night or something?
Yeah, no, it was definitely like a home by 1 a.m. thing.
Because now they split it in half, right?
Yeah, it was definitely home by like, you're there all day. You're excited. You go down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like it would have been like a doors open by noon or 3 o'clock thing. And they probably had it would have been 5 o'clock. But I think they had a lot of matches, but I don't think a lot of them went long.
No, we'll go over that. There was anyway. Okay, so the first match on the Mania one was Coco Beware versus the Model. And we have a picture of the Model because the Model is Canadian dude, Rick Martel. He was really popular. I think it was the AWA back when he was younger. And so this was his first real kick at the Model. You know what I mean? Like,
and my memory of that was really cool because it at that point we'd only seen house shows in Oshawa at the Civic Auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cool, but it was like the shitty old like sound system.
Mm-hmm.
That's like he had such a great intro. It was like a kind of funky like dude.
Well, the funny thing is they reused that song for Val Venus later, right?
Dude, and it was like and I just remember my first feeling of, do you hear the bell?
Yeah.
You hear Howard Finkel for the first time live in person. and then you get that bass that's going all through the SkyDome. When
Right.
you're 14 and it's WrestleMania, it's your first moment. I remember that being the coolest thing in the world.
So he was fighting Coco Beware. Now, here's the funny thing. So whenever I saw a wrestler with an animal when I was younger, I was like, "Oh, wow, this is so cool." Now, as an adult, I cringe because I know
Yep.
too much. But anyway, Coco Beware come out there, and Coco Beware, I thought he had the best finishing move, man.
Me too.
And
I
he's
love
just
the
this
power. I
little
love
dude,
it.
right? Like he pops the guy up like he's going to suplex and brings him down in like a DDT.
Loved
I
it.
thought that was a fantastic move. Now, we didn't get to see that in this match. Rick Martel put Coco Beware in the submission. So, boom, there you go. That was that match. All right. So, any like, if there's anything you want to throw on
No,
the
I
end
mean
of
I
that,
don't
no.
know. I don't
Okay.
remember.
Let's move along
too
because there's
much.
15 matches we got to
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Okay, so the next one, this is an interesting one too, because this was Andre the Giant's last big match, like real match. And he couldn't do much. I don't like you probably wouldn't remember that when you were young, but man, as I was
Yeah.
rewatching this, he couldn't do hardly anything. So he came in as a heel in this one, right? With Haku, the tag team champions, and of course Bobby the Brain was with them, and they fought Demolition. Okay. So Andre couldn't do much. He came in as a heel. He went out as a face, which was great to see him go out as a face because this was it for Andre. He couldn't do much. Demolition won the match, and they became the third-time champs.
Now, the thing about the one thing that WWE used to do back then is they never wanted the fans to go home unhappy.
Right.
So even when the babyface lost, things like this happened with Andre.
Well, plus him not rest. He didn't like being a heel either, right?
No,
So I think that was probably a personal thing. Like, okay, we're gonna send you off because he was done after this, right?
Yeah, and you can see it on the highlights. He misses Heenan, but Heenan still goes down.
Yeah, poor Andre.
Yeah.
Anybody want a peanut? All right, that's my okay. Number three. Number three. Third match was Earthquake versus Hercules Hernandez. And Earthquake had Jimmy Hart with him, who I just met, and is a spectacular, sincere, genuine human being. Jimmy Hart, man, top shelf, top shelf all the way, man. Yeah. I can't say good enough things about him. Sorry, I just have to interject this because I've met a lot of folks that I admired as a child, and man, they're douchebags. Jimmy Hart was amazing. Just want to say that to Jimmy Hart. Thank you for all your entertainment over the years, and cheers, my friend. Earthquake. So we're going to hear more about Earthquake because this was kind of his push. Now check this out. Andre's on his way out.
Earthquake on the way in.
Earthquake on his way in to fight Hogan, because again, we all know that Vince really loved his Giants, right? Like that's what he was all about, was the Giants. So we had Earthquake versus Hercules Hernandez, and this is basically just a match, as I mentioned, to give a little bit of steam behind Earthquake. Do you remember anything about this?
No, outside of that, I just remember him coming. He was Maka Singh in Canadian Stampede Wrestling. So
Hercules Hernandez, yeah, great wrestler.
I'm saying when Earthquake came in.
Oh, when Earthquake, sorry.
I remember seeing him from Canadian Championship Wrestling. I'm like, he's Earthquake, but he was Maka Singh,
and he's always looked like he was 40 years old too, right? Even when he was
apparently
25.
Bret Hart says he's like the greatest, nicest guy in the
I've read that about him too. He has a very, very kind heart. That's cool. So this is more just to give Earthquake a push, as we mentioned, because Andre's okay. So now we're at our fourth match, and what do we say every time we see a Brutus beefcake match? Thanks, Hulk Hogan. So this is Brutus the Barber at this point. Brutus. I liked him when he was in the Dream Team when I was really young with Greg Valentine. Anything after that, it's kind of hard to watch. I find with Brutus,
it just became the thing.
But do you remember him ever having a monumental match?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, there you go. Maybe, but if I named anybody else, you would. So we got Brutus the Barber versus the Perfect, Mr. Perfect.
Love that guy.
Kurt Hennig. Now he had the Genius with him at this time, right? Which was Lanny Poffo, which was Macho Man's brother.
Yeah.
So who do you think was the one so when they had their battle going on, it wasn't Kurt that was getting his haircut.
No, I mean
it was the Genius.
The Genius is getting his haircut.
And now what? Yeah, that's probably the whole purpose of having him in there was to have him take the haircuts. Now the funny thing here is that the Brutus beats him. He gets him with a headshot on the ring post, and Brutus wins. But Perfect doesn't get his haircut. The Genius does, and apparently legend has it that he didn't know he was going to get his haircut, and he was pretty ticked off about it after.
And you just, you have to just lie there and take it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
wild.
yeah.
So anyway, so no memories of that. I thought you were a big Kurt Hennig fan though, right?
I am. I was at. Well, I mean, outside, I love Hennig, but that was early Hennig.
All right, this wouldn't have been a good match to see anyway if Brutus the
it
Barber
was.
beats up on
No, because
Kurt, right?
we were all like, Brutus, despite it all, was definitely, you had the barber shop. There was so much tied to Brutus, like with
Thanks, Hulk Hogan.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
if people don't. Sorry, so he's Hulk Hogan's best friend in real life. Used to be. And
so
wherever Hulk went, Brutus the Barber went. It was just, and if you watch WCW, he had like 5 different 5 different gimmicks there. Oh my gosh. Okay, so moving on from Brutus. So that wasn't
table him for a second. I want to, at the end of this, I want to come back to you and ask you.
No, go ahead now. Go ahead.
So who is the modern day Brutus then? Because now it's
in the WWE?
In wrestling, that person that like
that tags along with somebody.
Yeah, but the fans.
Okay, how about everybody in the everybody in the what? Bloodline. Everybody in the bloodline. How about every single member in the bloodline?
I'm talking about a face that is like not quite over, but like everyone loves, but isn't really good. Who is it now? Because every generation kind of has one, but it's like, who is that now?
Is it The Miz?
Well, I mean, he goes between, but the Miz is good with the.
I don't know. You got to tell me. I don't know.
No, it's a question.
I thought you were gonna have the golden answer for this one.
No, it's not. It's
okay. Well, we'll have to think about. We'll come back to this at the end of the episode because that's a great question.
Yeah,
that's a great question. Because Well, again, my first response would be Solo Sikoa because he's never had a good match in his life, and he's just tagging around off The Rock, who hopefully everybody's getting tired of because man, what a dick. Anyway, don't get me started on The Rock. So we're moving on to the 5th match. Now this is another hilarious one. There were so many epic moments that happened during this one. Yeah, that's cool that you were a part of this.
Yeah.
So we've got Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown. Now, what Roddy Piper did for this match was painted half of his face, or was it his whole body?
It was half his body.
I couldn't get a great shot of this for some reason. So yeah, he painted his whole body half black, but Andre the Giant beforehand switched out the washable black makeup paint and put in like something that wouldn't come off his body. It was stuck on there for 2 weeks. So he stuck, and it went over horribly, right? Like blackface doesn't go over well at all.
No.
But he was trying apparently to just say that he's fighting for black people and white people because he was fighting a black dude, right? Bad News Brown, and Bad News Brown makes it slightly racial every time he fights. It was always cool. He's always on his own, man. He was I'm Bad News Brown. I fight for myself. Boom.
Yeah.
Nobody likes me, and I don't like them. So this was So that's the most iconic part about this match is that he couldn't get the makeup off, and
Piper was sort of in a weird space too at that point.
It could be, yeah. But so this was another thing behind the scenes is neither of the talent here wanted to lose the match. Neither would go, okay, well, you can win. So they did a double count out. It was a brawl outside, of course. They just started brawling, which makes sense to me. So there's a count out there. What's our first count out? I believe is that one. Yeah. All right. So that's any memories about that?
Just the intro. I mean, you have the pipes coming through that PA, and it's.
Could you see his half black face
on the screen? You could. Because they had the big screen.
So what was your initial reaction to that?
No one really knew what was going on.
Oh,
it was kind of like,
he's like the Road Warriors.
Well, your first thing is sort of like in 1990, it's like, oh, he's just trying to be racist.
Right.
That's sort of your first thing is like, that's what that is. But yeah. So and there wasn't really a storyline surrounding that. It was like
not a big one.
Half of these things didn't really have storylines, so it was like
that was one of the big points that I was getting.
Yeah.
Okay, so no big spec. You didn't get
much
out of that.
It was just the Piper intro.
Just
really.
Seeing Piper, and Piper was kind of
everybody. You're seeing all these guys for the first time.
Yeah, but everybody was kind of over Piper at that point too.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so next, now this is cool. In a funny way, though, because so now we have the 6th match is the Hart Foundation versus the Bolsheviks, and you're probably thinking, "Oh man, I got to see the Bret Hart fight. Wow, it's gonna be great!" And it was a squish match. Sorry, my wife calls them squish matches. It was a squash match.
Yeah,
and it was a squash match.
I think that the general consensus is that Bret was pissed that it was going to be a squash because he was first WrestleMania in Canada, and he came up.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is the Bolsheviks did the national anthem. They didn't even get through it. The Hart Foundation beat the crap out of them. They did the double team finisher and then did the pin, and that was it. And they're out of there. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. So were you bummed out that it was a squash match?
Oh yeah, I mean, Bret Hart was my hero, man.
I remember that.
you know what I mean? And I had a shirt made and everything, and it was a whole thing, and it was like I probably was half excited about the fact that they won so quick, and it was like
Right.
cool. It
That
was
is kind of
cool.
cool, right? It's like,
You're
man, he
kind of
kicked
like,
his ass.
yeah. So you get a little bit of that, and I think Brett came to terms with it later on that he was
Yeah.
fine. But it was
A
like,
sidebar to that is that was when he first started really streamlining that outfit that he was wearing
yeah.
to the Hitman, right? Like, so
But
that's another
if you
cool
think
one.
about that before that, because WrestleMania 4,
Mhm.
Bad News Brown turns on him, throws him out of the ring. That was supposed to
Right.
be the rise of him as the single
Ah,
guy, and then it kind of eased up, and then they put the Hart Foundation back together. So he had a bit
yeah.
of a lull couple of years there
Right.
where
Right.
he wasn't really happy, right? So
Okay, so the next one is we've got the seventh match, and we were showing Tito there's Tito Santana there before. Not much of a story match, but you got Tito Santana versus the Barbarian. Now, watching this back, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed this match. It was just two professional wrestlers doing their thing, man. The Barbarian won it with a devastating, like, wow, it was like the super clothesline kind of move deal, old school, but Tito sold it, right? He's really good. Yeah, there wasn't much to say about this, but it was a really great match. It was probably yeah, I'd say it was my favorite match that thus far for sure, like hands down.
the Miz had more success than Tito, but
Right.
Tito reminds me, not the Miz, sorry, Dolph Ziggler.
Okay.
Ziggler had more success than Tito, but
Right.
Tito reminds me of what an early version of
Yeah,
Ziggler
Dolph's
was.
doing well in AEW now,
But
right?
Tito was kind of the guy that they put in for everything because they were going to get a killer match out of him. He's the guy that basically created Shawn Michaels in
Mm-hmm.
from the next year actually in WrestleMania 7.
Yeah.
Or WrestleMania, whatever one was in Indianapolis. That was the one that kind of made Michaels.
Okay.
And that was through Tito. So he's
Right.
a workhorse, man.
Great wrestler. Great. I had
Yeah.
nothing bad. And again, another guy who, growing up, I watched a lot of his
Mhm.
matches and really enjoyed his
Yeah.
his work ethic and everything. Yeah, it was great. So just a great match. Number
Great match.
8. Okay, now we have the dude who's being punished, Dusty Rhodes, right? Like we got Dusty Rhodes finally in the WWF, and Vince McMahon puts him in a yellow polka dotted outfit, and
Yeah.
Dusty's like, "F you, I'll make it work," and he did. So we had Dusty. So this is
Macho
another
Man.
one. Or so this is the first intergender tag team match. All right, so
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
got
Sherry
Dusty and Sapphire.
Yeah.
You got Dusty and Sapphire, and you got Macho Man and Sherry. Excuse me, Sherry Martel. And I've always been a fan of Sherry Martel. I watched a documentary on her, man. Wow, what a life!
She's great.
That was the Dark Side of the Ring. I think I watched on her probably. Wow, and what a great pair these two were. The thing that I remember the most from this of them wasn't the match; it was after when Macho Man was talking and Sherry was just pacing. Just so mad, like for 2 minutes, just pacing and screaming. It was so in character and staying in there. Like these are the trailblazers, in my opinion,
Absolutely.
who really took wrestling and made it like way up here. Is folks like the Macho Man and Sherry Martel. So this was more. This wasn't even again about what was going on with the people in the ring. This was more about the Liz buildup, bringing Liz back into the fold, right? Because she got in her hands in the match a little bit. But yeah, again, so at the end of it, Dusty got the win.
But this is when Mania really kicked off.
Right. This was good, huh? Like
this is
like
when
I say,
it
this
was
is pretty
really
iconic. You know, these some of these wrestlers at this time, this is like such an iconic stage for them, right? They're setting the precedence for what is to come that we have now.
I mean, seeing the Macho Man come in, oh my god,
he was always been my favorite, dude. I loved his
too.
capes and early going.
I saw him in Oshawa. He actually replaced Ric Flair.
Wow.
It was Macho against the Undertaker. Because Ric Flair couldn't make it, and I was like, just like, oh.
Okay, sorry, Undertaker sidebar.
Mm.
How many kids do you think are not aware that whole when he rises up is from Michael Myers?
Oh, I'm assuming none. But like
that'd be a great trivia question for some younglings. Where did he get that from? That's like totally Michael Myers thing. Okay, so anyway, that's the Dusty Rhodes match. Not much going. Dusty was being punished by Vince, man. We all know that Vince is a piece of shit. I don't know how good of a person Dusty is. I've heard some bad stories about him as well. But hey, I'm not much for punishing people, especially like on live TV for my own
80s, 70s, and 80s, man.
No, but I did, you know.
They were making $9 a match.
We know a lot about Vince now, right?
Yep.
And he used to punish people by humiliating them. That's not what you
Yep.
do to people who are feeling uncomfortable. Oh, so anyway, moving on. That's number 8. Holy cow, dude. Now, we were just talking. So we got the Rockers, or were they the Midnight Rockers? And it's a very young Marty Jannetty and your boy there, Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
And they're fighting the Orient Express. Okay, now this is just a throwaway match, really. It was a count out. They used dust in the eyes at the one point, you know, the one gimmick that's, you know, but
it's been around forever.
It was cocaine.
Yeah. I'm sure.
That's what got Shawn Michaels hooked on cocaine. Was he kept having it thrown in his face. It wasn't his fault. So this was kind of a throwaway match. It was cute to see the little Rockers in there, but you know, I don't know. What do you remember this match? Because I watched it and I found myself drifting.
Well, they were still relatively new. I mean, we were out of WrestleMania 5. Like they were kind of new.
Super new, right?
They were kind of new. The Orient Express were sort of like the bad guy Japanese heels. So
generic.
So it was kind of it was the changing of the guard at that time,
right?
Because you kind of had even the Hart Foundation were sort of like going to end soon, and Brent was going to rise, and so you had that new tag team thing. So I just remember being stoked to see them.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
This was like a filler song, the one, right?
Totally.
We got to take up 2 minutes here, man. What are we gonna do? Here's a great song. Rolls eyes. Okay, so so that wasn't too much to deal with there. Now, again, this was kind of this wasn't about the people in the match. This was again about boosting Earthquake, who we talked about earlier. It's going to be the next Andre. This was Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who always makes me laugh because, man, this guy made a gimmick out of holding a 2x4 and yelling USA, and versus Dino Bravo, who I really liked, actually. If you are into it, you got to check out the Dark Side of the Ring, Dino Bravo, right up the road from me here in Montreal. Real cool stuff. Jim Duggan gets the win, but Earthquake comes in after and beats the shit out of Jim Duggan, which is the push again for Earthquake. Second push, right?
Yep.
Second push. What do you remember this? Do you remember him at the end coming out? The swerve.
I don't remember him because I'd have to like rewatch it, but I just remember we were all super stoked to see Hacksaw Jim Duggan because you're 14. You're like,
because he's got a 2x4. But the funny thing is he's fighting a Canadian and he's yelling USA in Toronto.
I know we were all. I remember that specifically being
that dumb. Didn't go over. I can see that didn't go over, but
no, that was dumb. But we were pretty stoked to kind of see him and.
That's cool.
Yeah, but
he was great in the past.
I mean, I know there's like that switch where we all started liking the bad guys, but I was still in relative babyface mode back then.
Right. Well, you know what? Okay, so you know what usurped that match around this point in time? You guys did the wave, and everybody was like thrilled with it. Like the announcers could not believe that you guys did the wave. Wow, the Toronto Canada's insane! This is crazy! It's a wave. Do you remember the wave? Do you remember that moment?
I do, but because
that was again the first wave at any WrestleMania event. Like this was a very legendary night, man. That's very cool.
We'd only been there 2 hours already. But also the SkyDome was new.
Yes.
So it was almost it was half the people's first time there.
Right.
You couldn't get into a Blue Jay game.
Right.
The SkyDome was only a year old at that point.
So there was just a good vibe going on.
Yeah,
great electricity.
Was just excited to be
I get that. I felt that before. Okay, so excuse me. Okay, now here's another match. So the Boss Man was getting a push at this point in time too. So your 12th match was Boss Man versus Akeem. And
one man gang.
Yes, I was gonna say I liked this guy. I didn't get this. This is Vince McMahon making fun of a great big guy, I guess. One Man Gang was great. I guess he did do that gimmick for a long time. But we got the Boss Man versus One Man Gang, and Ted DiBiase's thrown in there. They're trying to give Boss Man a push. He gets the win, but Ted DiBiase comes in and beats the shit out of him after, kind of thing, right? Again, not a huge fan of Akeem. I don't like it when they it's kind of evident that they're making fun of or Vince is making fun of somebody, because this is just like a gimmick that's like Wang Festival to me. But what do you remember this match at all? Or
I remember Boss Man because I was definitely not an Akeem guy.
No, but I liked Boss Man's character. It was good.
I love the Boss Man, and that was his face turn. And so
two wrestlers that were great in AWA or NWA before that as well, right?
But you want like, when you're that young, you want your bad guys to turn good.
Yeah.
At some point, and that's where that happened there.
So, and this was really again all about One Man Gang and Ted DiBiase getting a feud going. Got to get the feuds going. Okay, now the third part here. This is interesting. Maybe not in a great way, but Rhythm and Blues introduced a new song, and they performed it. Wow, was that bad? So Rhythm of Blues is Honky Tonk Man,
Greg Valentine,
and Greg Valentine with Jimmy Hart in there.
If you watch Greg Valentine in that car,
hold on, Long's pointing at me. Something happened.
But if you watch Greg Valentine in that car, he's miserable.
Oh, are you kidding me? They were actually a pretty rad tag team if they would have dropped the whole gimmicky stuff. But that song was horrible. And I know what it's like because when I had my school shows, and when I've had shows as an adult too, or when I was an adult, you have really, really bad. That takes a lot out of you, man. That's tough because once you start screwing up if you're singing, your brain goes in that train wreck mode, and you're done. You lock eyes with somebody who's looking at you like you're an idiot. And so do you remember that?
Well, it was the one thing about it was like, I'd have to look at it, but there was a couple of famous people, a part of those girl dancers. One of the girls went on to be somebody.
Oh man, what was it? Because I kind of lost it on that.
But it was cringing. It was cringy, but it was just part of the spectacle. It was like, I was
just curious if you remember it, or
I don't,
because you've always obviously you're into music. If back then you were like, ooh,
it would have been. But the thing is that the Honky Tonk Man was kitschy and lame, anyways, from a standpoint of like it was supposed to be bad.
So watching it back with the close-ups looks so cringy. You feel bad for them. So anyway, so that happened, but then you want to start a feud, so you send out your friends, the Bushwhackers. The only reason they were there was to come out and do this jump swerve at the end there. So they beat them up. Okay, now next, this was a good match. There really wasn't too much of a point to it, but we had number 14, and this was the last match. This is the second last match. Here we go. Rick Rude versus Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Now, Rick Rude again. Now, this was just a good match. And again, in my opinion, Rick Rude's one of the greatest wrestlers ever. I can't think of a really bad match he's had, but I can think of a lot of good ones, man. Well, here's an example. Can you think of a great Rick Rude match? Yes, I can. So, and then Jimmy Snuka, even though the guy's a piece of shit, he was a really good wrestler. And this was just a good match. You know what I mean? Rick Rude got the win, of course, because I think this was just to push Rick Rude a bit. But what do you remember about this and Rick Rude?
Well,
or was it more about Jimmy Snuka?
I mean, no. Well, we were all excited to see Snuka, but I mean, this moment for me at 14, that whole thing was seeing all these iconic figures for the first time. So,
but if Superfly doesn't do the top rope thing, it's like
there's nothing,
right? But you got Rick Rude, who they were giving the push to.
Yeah, Rick wasn't quite there yet. So, but we were, the fat sweat hog thing was pretty hilarious that he would do. You Canadian fat, whatever.
Yeah. He was great heel.
Ironically, So it was fine. One thing I forgot to say was the $1 Million Man when he showed up, and he got beat up, didn't he? He got beat up somewhere in there because he gave out $100 bills. They gave out $100 bills to the front row, and my friend.
Lindsay, you know what? We missed a match. Sorry, we did miss a match.
Roberts,
it was Ted Diop. Yes, it was. It was Ted. Yeah. I apologize.
Yeah,
we missed a match. So back at 11, there was Ted DiBiase, and this was for the $1 Million belt versus Jake the Snake, and this was the third count out. This is where the Wave came in. Was right there. Sorry, because I got talking about the Wave, and then I got distracted because that's right there.
They gave out
that was
money.
The third count out too, right?
It was, and they gave out $100 bills to the front crowd, the front of the crowd. And my friend Lindsay Dukowicz and Lonnie may remember Daryl Dukowicz. They'd won front row tickets to WrestleMania, and I remember what. And if you go and look at it, it's Lindsay holding the $100 bill when they put her on the screen.
That's so cool.
That was I remember being so jealous that she won front row tickets.
Yeah, geez, Louise. So sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah. So you didn't get to see Jake do the DDT?
No, but I do. But I do have a picture of Jake doing the DDT in Oshawa on.
It's just some drunk lady in the back alley.
No, on Rick Martel, I think.
Oh, okay.
And the model, because they had a feud.
Right.
And I had this. That's where I learned the secret of the DDT.
Ah, okay. Cool.
Because I actually got it on film of
Right.
Rick Martel taking the DDT
Mhm.
and turning his head into Jake's body.
Ah.
And that's where I learned
I
how
thought you saw them beforehand and saw them doing like a crap load of
No,
cocaine, and you were like,
no.
"Ah, that's how they do it."
But that's where that happened. That's where I
That's
saw.
awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Anyways,
forgot about that one because I got distracted by the wave because I'm
yeah.
enamored by when a whole
So it just reminded me.
stadium of people are in unison.
It reminded me of that. You're going back to Rick Rude.
Yep.
It reminded me of because Rick and Jake started a feud after that,
Right.
or
Yep.
around that time.
With Jake's wife was involved.
But yeah. So my friend Lindsay Dukowich got the $100 bill, and if you go back and watch WrestleMania 6, that's her in the front row holding it.
$100 bill. Right on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, dude. So in between this match and the world title match between Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, what was going on, man? Like, did you go get something? Did you go to the bathroom? Did you grab something to eat? Were you just like glued
We
to
were
your seat? Was
glued.
there a break in
No,
between?
it just kept flowing. They were glued, and I think if you read the reports on WrestleMania, they were running really late.
Really? Okay. Well,
So
that's a lot of matches.
They had to get it done because we talked about this before, but CFTO
Mm-hmm.
and CTV
Mm-hmm.
used to be the only place that would actually cover wrestling,
Ah,
and they
okay.
wanted to make sure that they got a clip on the 11:30 news.
Yeah.
And so they were running really late, so they just kind of hustled into it. I learned that after, but we
Right,
weren't
of
leaving.
course.
We weren't leaving our seat.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have this. See, both these guys are, and again, these guys both set the precedence for things to come. Of course, Hogan did, in some positive ways and some negative ways, and then the Warrior, the same deal, man. Some positive things he did and some negative things, and both the negative things that both Hogan and Warrior eventually did were so fucked up, man. Like, it's wild. I'm not going to get into that right now, but it's wild that these guys were the best of times, but yet eventually you find out they were the worst of times. You know what I mean? It's some of the stuff, holding your boss ransom for money, and then there's Hogan who's controlling things backstage because of his ego. So you've got not only the powers of muscle, you got the powers of ego coming in here, and this again is the changing of the guard. This is like, holy cow, like Hogan had the title for 6 years, and then this is the night he loses it, and you were there again, dude. This is incredible. So you tell us.
I was so excited to see Hulk Hogan because we grew up in it, and it was like he was like the biggest superhero in the world to us as a wrestling fan, coming from WrestleMania 1 all the way through. I mean, there wasn't, despite what people maybe retro back and go, I hated Hogan. Sorry, everyone loved Hulk Hogan.
Mhm.
It didn't matter. But I can remember cheering for the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh yeah.
I remember I was like,
everybody loved Hogan, but at the same time, I think it was like I myself, I remember was just like, this has got put. It was kind of like the horse that had the broken leg. It was like, I'm sorry, man, I love you, but you got to go down.
I was like, I was super stoked when Macho became the new champ in WrestleMania 4, and how I was like, wow, this is the first time I've seen like a new champion.
Yeah.
But Hogan, to see him in person, it was the most insane thing in the world. Like I've never, like, it was insane. And then, but I was all about Warrior winning because I wanted to see it.
We all wanted to see it.
You know what I mean? I wanted to see it. So it was really cool. And Hogan made the exit, and the whole thing. And then we know how it went after that. It fizzled out. But
well, that's good. And that's when Warrior started getting. People start talking shit about him. He starts taking it seriously. People start saying, well, he makes this much, and keep your head down and just keep working, brother.
But it was a hell of a moment, and it was such an incredible memory.
Yeah.
And my only not regret about that is just that I never made it to WrestleMania 18 to see him and Rock. That would have been like two of the most iconic.
You could have bookended, right?
Yeah, I could have bookended it. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah.
And of course, so it was a good match, though.
No, but
really,
well, it wasn't a good.
Or were you just exhausted at that point?
No, I mean, as a kid, you don't knowing now what I know now. You look back at it, and you go, "This is pretty awful," but it was, it was just two guys going at it.
Well, here's the funny thing: is there were so many performers before that were actually better wrestlers than both the two people, but their gimmicks were not as good, right? Hogan had. I'm not gonna. It's like to me, it's something like like something like Taylor Swift, who has the world in the palm of her hand, but the substance to what she's doing is really not that deep. You know what I mean? But people dig that, and that's cool. You get that. You totally get that. I'm not going to hate on people because they're successful, right?
It's funny because he became I was such a fan of him when he turned into a bad guy, and then but the rumors of how good of a wrestler he was prior to all this shit,
right?
Like when he was in Japan and stuff. They're like, if they would have let him be that guy, people would have been like, whoa. But he didn't. He was like the say your prayers, eat your vitamins guy, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole other story too, right?
There's a whole, but I was definitely an all warrior.
Yeah, I was too. So that was WrestleMania friggin' 6, man, in Toronto SkyDome, and Brent was there, man. That is so cool.
It was so fun.
Cool. Right on. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We want to show you just a little commercial here about our comic book company because
that's rad.
I forgot to pimp it before. So here's Cult of Machete number 2, featuring Stay Hungry by John Garney, and here's Cult of Machete number 1, featuring like the whole series has John's fingerprints all over it. I'm doing all the art. Brent is one of our production managers on the book, basically. So we're all involved in this, and it's going really well. We're going monthly, which is cool. Do we have the video there? Yeah. Okay. So let's just all right. So we're just gonna we'll peace out here, and we'll leave you with the video of the cool products. And thanks for tuning in and sharing your experience on that, Brent. That's really cool. Man. That is a chunk of history when it comes to wrestling. As I say, those guys set the precedence. That event set the precedence in more than one way, and it's cool you can be a part of it, man. That's really cool.
It was deadly. $28.
That's fucking that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. All right, good times, my friends, and
rad dudes
bitching.